Welcome to the Gold Ghosts and Guns podcast for October 14th, 2025. My name is Tom Luongo. We've got a lot to talk about. It's episode 234, and I have with me the great pleasure of finally getting to meet the Podfather himself, Adam Curry. He is in the house. Adam, how are you?
Tom, let me just throw that right back at you, man. I have been listening to the GG&G podcast for several years. I am delighted to talk with you. I'm a little embarrassed, actually, because I have learned so much from you and from your guests that I've incorporated into my own work, into the No Agenda show. I was actually saying to my wife, I said, like, this guy knows everything that I talk about. It's like I can't tell him anything new. There's nothing really new I got to say, particularly when it comes to what I've dubbed it now the North Sea Nexus, which you would call the Anglo-Dutch system. I've learned a lot from you and from the ladies at Promethean Action.
Oh, yeah.
It has really given me the exact perspective I was missing for many, many years on the global scale. I mean, and especially having lived in the UK, met the Queen. I grew up in the Netherlands, met the King and the Queen. So, it's like, wow, you guys just blew me away when I started to see it. Like scales fell from my eyes. Like, oh, it's been here the whole time. I totally get it. And particularly at this time in history, what just happened in Gaza and in Egypt. I mean, this is amazing what's taking place in our lifetime. It's so much fun.
It really is. And it's funny, like I've heard for a while now, maybe but the last year, maybe about a year or so, that I knew that you were a listener on the podcast. I saw that you, at one point, you tipped me on Fountain a fair amount on one of the podcasts. And I saw that and I was like, very cool. But since I've never signed up on the new commenting system, I couldn't.
We call that value for value, Tom,
yeah,
not
totally.
Tipping. Because if you work for tips, you get tip money, and I like to send values. Like, I got value, I'm sending it back. I'm glad you saw that. Good.
I agree, and I really like the Fountain business model. And the first time I saw it, the first thing I did was like I signed right up, and make sure that the podcast was syndicated over there as well. And so yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating for me. This is quite a treat. I just I knew that you had been a fan. I was like, okay, well, at some point, and then it was just one of my subscribers was like, dude, he listens to the podcast. Would you like me to set up an invitation? I'm like, yeah, because one of the things that people don't realize is that I have terrible social anxiety and reaching out to people I don't know.
Really?
I really do. I don't like doing it. And I consider myself like, is that too forward or whatever? And I'm just terrible at it. So I tend to really like to have people either do the introduction for me, or if it's somebody that I don't know, but I would like to know, I like to do a 3-party podcast. I don't know about how you feel about that, but do a 3-party podcast where I get to meet the person in a neutral setting and then go from there. I did that with Martin Armstrong. Did that with actually Susan Kokinda from Promethean Action. So we set that up as well to do it that way. It was just a normal thing with me. It doesn't, I know it doesn't come across like, it publicly, but dude, I sweat all of these new interactions every time. It's really terrible.
Wasn't it a listener, a mutual listener who connected us? I can't remember. I think so.
Yeah,
right?
It was. And that listener happens to be a patron of mine. And so they pinged me either on our private server or in DM or whatever. And I said, well, of course, if you can pull that off, that'd be fantastic. So he did. So
here we are.
Here we are. Right? So, all right. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about your version of the North Sea Nexus. That's a really cool way of putting it. And let's talk about that, because it's interesting looking at what I've saw the scene today alone. There were about 2 or 3 things that occurred that with the British at the center of it that I thought was really interesting. It was yesterday, of course, was Trump embarrassing Keir Starmer at the press conference, which was hilarious.
You body checked him right out of the way, man. It was awesome. It was so. Did you see the British on Sky News? I guess they do a live YouTube, and so it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Eurovision Song Contest. That I grew up with that,
right?
And it used to be Sir Terry Wogan, and he would, because the UK always comes in last. They always get a 0 point. And they always say, they've won once or twice, and he would just always be making these very British, innuendo like comments, and always very sexually oriented about how gay this all is. And so Jeremy, I forget his last name, he was basically doing this while Trump was talking. And so that's not on Sky, but it was on the YouTube. And he's just cutting up about, look at Starmer, it's alphabetical. Oh man, he can't believe that why is he even up there? And then when President Trump gets to the UK, he's like, where is Steer? And he comes up like he's going to talk, and Trump just goes right in front of him like, okay, well, that's great. Because of course, this is a big in your face against exactly him and the entire North Sea Nexus system. Yeah. It was beautiful.
It really was. It was one of those moments that when I saw it this morning, when I woke up, I got up way too early this morning, and I was in my Twitter feed, like doing all sorts of stuff all day, and I watched that. And of course, I have an entire research division I like to call my community. We have a private server, and these guys just sit there all day, like funneling as much stuff to me as humanly possible. It's crazy, right? And I have to just filter the signal to the noise. And I watched that, and I was like, oh, that's just too funny. But then what's really interesting, right, was that one of my regular, one of my absolute regulars, a Serbian fellow actually, likes to DM me with stuff that in case I miss something. He always DMs me on our private Slack server, and he DM'd me this thing this morning that happened in British Parliament, where a guy who actually speaks for the king was out, I don't remember his name, was out there in Parliament saying that we have actual traitors in Parliament working for the Chinese, blah 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 blah. I'm like,
oh wow,
oh my fucking God, are you kidding me? Okay, because the first thing I thought of was, like, I've been arguing with my friend Ian Burlingame as to what happened when Trump went to
the UK
to London to meet with the king. Somebody asked me on Twitter one day, they said, why is Trump going to meet with the enemy? And I said, well, to offer terms of surrender. I was being kind of flip about it, right?
Keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. Right. It's a total strategy.
But what the other side of it was, when I said that, and I've been saying, like, my friend EM was like, no, man, he offered terms of surrender. The king accepted, but the king is trapped by this whole system around him. And that's EM's argument. And when I saw, and so when I've been thinking about, I said, you may be right. I think I'm right. Doesn't really matter. We'll find out over time. Events will play out, and someone will be right about this. And then, we'll either buy each other a rye or whatever, and we'll hack it out like men, right? That's what we're supposed to do. So what was really interesting was that thing this morning tells me that the king is starting to push back. Is starting to make his move on Parliament.
Good observation.
That's really interesting.
So first of all, very interesting. We have very similar production models. We don't call our audience listeners from day one for 18 years. We've called them producers. And everyone has a responsibility to produce, and everybody is an expert at something. And so when it comes up, or if we say something wrong, or if we miss it, or we haven't talked about it, you have an obligation to let us know. And that really occurs through email mainly. So I've built up my system with what we call our boots on the ground. So very similar to your private group. It is the only way to do the kind of programming that we do. I mean, we have dude named Mohammed, and he's literally in the coffee shops in the Middle East, and they love to gossip over there. So he'll be saying, hey, everyone's all in on this. Everyone thinks this is great. Everybody was all for nailing those guys in Qatar, except when it got screwed up, they decided to leave Bibi Netanyahu holding the bag. Oh, you screwed it up, man. We had nothing to do with it. I mean, This kind of stuff you cannot get as a mainstream production outfit. You just can't. Like, I see their credit rolls. They got 10 producers. I'm like, I got 3,000, 3,000, and they know the minutia.
It's true. It really is true. And everybody has an extra thing. I like to call them my Baker Street regulars. Or Sherlock Holmes.
Good. Right? Yeah, that's very good.
And I have my ears to the ground everywhere, and I have people. I leave my DMs on Twitter wide open. Even at this late date, even though you'd think that it would be nothing but trolls, and it's not. It's 9 times out of 10. Everybody's really respectful of my time. They send me stuff. They prepare. They send me a thing, and I'm like, didn't know that. Excellent observation. And what I've noticed is that over time, people are getting better
Oh
They're
yeah.
getting better
Oh,
at.
they're sending me pre-clipped things. I still get the "you've got to see this is great." Click on the link, 3 hour podcast. Like, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't do. You got to give me time codes at least. But
Right,
we've trained them, and it's funny you call the trolls because when we do the show, we actually do it live to tape. We've always done that.
right.
And we have a chat room, which you call the troll room, because literally, and it's just ephemeral, right? It just scrolls by and it's gone. And so, yeah, 80% is trolling on specifically trying to get me mad.
Hmm.
But then there's a one liner, there's a fact check, there's just stuff that's in real time. Man, this is the model, Tom. This is the model.
It's interesting you say that, Adam, because when I first started doing this, I used to be actually in this room. It was laid out differently then. Wearing my old farmer's hat because I was embarrassed about being bald in public or whatever. I just like the hat. The hat was cool, and my Rickenbacker hanging 4003 hanging on the wall behind me, and everything else. And I was doing this into my phone on Periscope before Periscope was
Oh,
bought and
Periscope. Yeah,
then destroyed
baby.
by Twitter, right?
Old
And so
school.
I
Yeah.
sat there the entire time with my little stylus for my phone doing this thing, and then we transferred it eventually to YouTube. We did live streams for years. But yes, you're absolutely right. It was people trying to get you off kilter, but then you
Mm-hmm.
had your regulars coming in and constantly pushing the
Stuff that
pushing
you
the
need,
narrative forward, and it was great stuff.
stuff
It
you can
was
use.
and it was difficult as hell. I don't know how I did it back then, and I wouldn't want to do it today. I get to be honest with you, but I actually do in some ways also miss it because it was like you're out there flying without a net, right, and just doing the thing, right,
Yeah.
and you're in real time, and it's going out there across 3 different platforms. You're like, well, this one's either going to suck or it's not, and there we go.
Exactly. So I want to get
Sure.
back to what you're saying about the king, and I'll just give you my two brushes with royalty
Right.
because they're my experience is they're highly unimpressive. And so first of all, I moved to the Netherlands when I was 7 years old. So I grew up there, born in the States, moved back to do MTV in the mid to late 80s. And I had a very short college career for about 3 months and decided that was not for me. And that's probably what saved me. But in the UK, I lived there for 3 years, first in Guildford, stockbroker belt, and then in South London, actually Clapham Commons, but that's for the poor people who want to say they live in South London. And I got an invitation from Her Majesty the Queen to come to Buckingham Palace, and was for the relaunch of her the royal website. And this is when Queen Elizabeth was still alive.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to that. I mean, I got, I still have the framed invitation, it's like one of those things, gold embossed and everything. And so the first thing, they picked me up in a Mercedes, which I was like, well, that's kind of a faux pas. Okay. We went into the front gates of Buckingham Palace, which was wild, it like opens up. You go to the back, and I mean, at that point, and I've been talking about this on the show, and Dvorak, my partner, he was like, you got to steal some soap or a hand towel. And, okay, yeah, of course. And so there was a bunch of people for this relaunch. And the first thing, they put you into this waiting room, which is a long corridor type room, just artwork stacked all over the place. I mean, I'm talking Van Goghs and Rembrandts that I've never even heard of or seen before. I mean, but it was obvious. It's like, okay, you got some stuff here. Went into the restroom, of course. Paper towel dispenser locked to the wall, no soap, no little soaps. It was all like a machine. So that was totally disappointing. But I remember going through the reception line to meet the Queen. You shake her hand. And of course, the whole idea is you don't look at the Queen. I'm like, I'm going to look this woman right in the eye. And she's standing on a box. She was quite tiny. And I shake her hand, Your Majesty. I look in her eyes, Tom, nothing. It's like I was looking right through dark holes to the back of her skull. There was nothing there. Now, and I've always been under the impression that none of this royalty stuff is ceremonial. I've never bought into that. I mean, we know the holdings, particularly Royal Dutch Shell, which of course now is also Anglican. Look at the banking. I mean, I know my history of the Netherlands. I know about the East India Company. all this stuff that just kind of disappears out of the history books at some point. Like, well, where did that go? That didn't actually end, did it? Right? I
Yep.
know who transported the slaves to America. It was the British and the Dutch. I mean, these guys literally did it. I grew up with, the Indonesian issue because the Netherlands was imperial. They had colonies all over the place,
Right.
and Indonesia was a big one. And so a couple of years ago, I was invited to meet the now Dutch king and the queen, so Prince Willem and Queen Maxima. Now, you got to know that I've known the prince. I knew the king when he was prince. We knew him as Prince Pils, as in Pilsner, because he was just a partier. He was drinking, so we call him Prince Pils. He was at my house, literally in Amsterdam. He guy came by, like, hey, my daughter went up to him and said, so you're a prince? And my daughter was 7 or 8, 9. He said, yeah, I'm a prince. Well, where's your puffy pants then? I mean, so this is the kind of guy, and now he becomes king. And so, and he got married to Queen Maxima, her real name is Maxima Zornieta. Her dad is from Argentina. She's from Argentina. He was part of some stuff that went on. He wasn't even allowed to attend the wedding. This is how evil that family is. So they invited me to this lunch. It was like 12 other people there, and I've been flying helicopters and planes since 2006, and the prince is also a pilot. In fact, his main duties is to fly KLM planes, and he'll at the end of the flight he'll come out and say, yeah, I was your captain. This is the kind of stuff he was doing.
Right.
And so he was busting on me right away about flying, and totally nice guy, but is this the smartest man in the world? No. And the queen, this was totally interesting. So after lunch, we're having coffee in like a reception area, and everyone's going downstairs to take the big group photo. And the queen, she's sitting there and she's talking to me. Oh, I love New York, and Ivanka is a good friend of mine, and she's hair flipping me, Tom. I'm like, girl, are you flirting with me? The king actually came upstairs to say, are you guys coming or what?
Right.
And so these people are highly unimpressive, nice people, but whoever is running it, it's not them. So whatever the king is doing, there's a system that I haven't quite breached yet, don't quite understand, but I think it's so deep. And what I've learned from you and your guests is really about the city of London. And I've always known that it was its own entity, and that these are all things that do almost 20 years of a podcast called No Agenda and Media Deconstruction. You learn these things. Right. But I have a friend here, former banker for Bankers Trust. And I think in 2000, I want to say 2011, 10 or 11, I'd just gone to Austin, and I don't live there anymore, but I was living in Austin. And he said, his wife, and they were at some function, and his wife says, did you hear? We won. So what do you mean? We won. And then he came by and said, oh, yeah, no, we won. We beat the British bankers. And I never really understood, and I think that had something to do with the financial crisis. I'm actually seeing him tomorrow, so I'm going to ask him specifically what he meant. But I know that there's this war that's been going on between American bankers and the city of London. And then through your guests, I started to understand about LIBOR. Of course, I knew about the LIBOR scandal, but didn't really understand, all the repercussions of it and how much it controls the rest of the world. So when I started to put it all together, and then thinking back to the Far East India Company, the West India Company, hey, it's only been 250 years. I think these people still hate us. Yeah. And how about Israel? Who started that stuff? I mean, come on, man. It's becoming so obvious to me.
Yeah, it's really funny, Adam. And you put all that together, and I'm not gonna lie, man. It's been a long road for me as well. I came at it from a completely different angle, right? I came at it through monetary policy, Austrian economics, and that criticism, right? Gold and all of that, and then slowly over time, the more I realized that I've said this in many venues that like the way I got here was like in order to do the job of my first newsletter gig with Newsmax is if you need to understand gold, you need to understand the politics because gold is at the center of all money. It's the center of everything, even though they say it's not. It's of course whatever they say is not true, right? So this is a very hard one thing for me. I started out as a kind of classic American critic on that from that perspective, criticizing the empire, criticizing
Mm-hmm.
the America that I was told. I was told I was supposed to inherit, and then I'm looking at the America I got, going, yeah, those two things don't match. And then it ain't right. And then naturally, the natural antipode to that, especially during the 2013 through 2015 period, was notice how well Putin was standing up and starting to stand up real resistance to what we all perceived as the American empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to John talk about this stuff about some of the oil trade. I remember all this stuff back then as I was starting to learn these things. When I did 2 years working with a guy over in before I got the job with Newsmax, I spent 2 years working with a guy over in Vietnam. So we were trying to build a business, me on a Skype call, 12 hours out of phase with a stockbroker who wanted to become a fund manager, and that was what we were doing. We were writing about everything. And so this is when I learned, about the geopolitical. I really started to learn Mackinder politics, or geopolitics, even though I didn't know what it meant, didn't know the term, which of course
Mm-hmm.
was that whole trying to bottle China up behind the Straits of Malacca are very, very important thing. And
Wow.
when I
Yeah.
learned all that and I started to watch them, well, how can we get out from underneath that? Well, let's build a pipeline from Kunming out to central Burma. And then lo and behold, 3 months later, as they're finishing the thing, the CIA's in there blowing up, starting,
Oh, we got a
internecine
civil
or,
war.
internecine violence. I
Blame it
remember,
on Facebook.
all this stuff. And I remember now the one time, first time I interacted with John specific as this kind of commentator via No Agenda, which was him talking about how Hillary Clinton owns so much of the IPI versus TAPI pipeline, and she kept pushing for the TAPI pipeline because she had business interest in it, even though the
Yes.
IPI pipeline, Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline made so much more sense. TAP
Right.
being Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. I remember him talking about that. I'm like, that's really important. Okay, so noted. Put that in the hopper in the back of the brain. So like this stuff is just it's all really hard won, and it's only in the last few years that it became really obvious to me. I started with the Davos crowd back in 2017. Like I just watched this whole playing out. And I'm like, yeah, the group of people who think they run the world. Let's call them the
Right.
Davos crowd. I literally wrote that one day on the blog. It showed up on
The
Zero Hedge,
the
and then
drinking club, we call
right,
it. The
the
drinking
drinking
club.
club. Fair
Hmm.
enough. I'm now at the point now I'm calling it the high table from John
Fair.
Wick,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because it's actually right. If you watch the John Wick movies, they're like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
telling you, dude, right?
There it
They're telling you
is.
about the organized crime and the use of gold and all of this stuff. There's a reason why the thing's called the Continental.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you get it
So
yet? Yeah.
so for me, it's like don't feel bad. London does a really good job of covering its tracks, and I was starting to go down this part of the rabbit hole, and then I met Richard Poe,
Yeah.
and everything changed.
I mean, I've read a lot of his stuff. It's amazing. He really knows what he's talking about.
He's a house on fire, and I've interviewed Richard a couple of times. I haven't talked to him recently. I really need to get him back on the podcast. I almost feel bad that I haven't gotten Richard back on the podcast. I'm not avoiding him or anything. I just like when
You're
I put
socially
everything together, I
awkward,
just
Tom.
forget.
We know it. We get it.
Yeah. So I love the guy, but yeah, no, Richard really opened my eyes to this. And then when I was like starting to really put through the whole, it's SOFR and LIBOR that were the big thing.
Hmm.
And once you grab that and you understood that, and then you put all the monetary policy stuff together and you put together everything you've learned about the Eurodollar system and all of these things, you're like, oh, they were just running a currency arbitrage scam on us the entire time. And then I read something on Twitter. The other guy was going literally chapter and verse on how the British East India Company plus the Crown Corporation became at Bretton Woods the Bank of International Settlements,
Yes.
the freaking IMF and DTCC. And I'm like, huh. I'm not
Especially
wrong.
DTCC. That's the big scam that only
Yeah.
what's our boy's name? The Overstock CEO.
Oh, Patrick Byrne.
Patrick Byrne. Yeah. I mean, he talked about that a lot.
Hmm.
It's so it really, I mean, what blew I was actually a gold guy back in 2009,
Mm.
and I was really into Rand Paul during the 2008 election,
Ron.
and like, yeah, you got to buy gold. And Dvorak was laughing at me, oh, you're a gold bug. And I think I bought a whole bunch of coins at maybe 650, something like that, and I still have them. I still hold on to them. I actually had a brick. I had because I had a lot of money back then. There's a lot of stuff happened in my life, and I had a bar, and Dvorak's like, man, you got to paint that black and make it a doorstop. Had I only done that, because I lost it in the divorce, so, and that's probably half a house now, whatever that thing was worth. But then in 2010, no, 2011, 12, people started telling us about Bitcoin. And, this is real money, and and we were laughing. We're like, this is Beanie Babies for the internet. We've seen all this stuff. I was not looking at it. People were sending us Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. And I completely ignored it. I was not at all focused on what they were really saying. I didn't really understand money. I mean, of course, I understood the relationship to gold and money, and I understand Bretton Woods, and of course, it was the City of London Forex that really screwed it up, which made us go off the gold standard, 71. And so, fast forward to 2015, and I'm like, hey. I was day trading, believe it or not. I was day trading. I was like, hey, that stuff's at $900. Let me go see if so I pull out the old laptop and like looking around, had to sync the chain for 24 hours. Like, oh, I got 65 of these. Sell them all. So I sold 65 Bitcoin for $900 a piece to day trade, mind you.
All right.
So I learned a hard lesson from that. And then my wife and I, when it dipped down below 3,000, we said, that's it. I've studied it. I've learned it. At this point, we've already incorporated the Lightning Network into podcasting 2.0. I get it. Programmable money. I understand the concept. And I really am a Bitcoin maximalist. So when you started talking about stable coin and how that was going to work, it blew my mind. I'm like, wow, this is when I went, President Trump, he's smart, but he also has a lot of smart people around who really know what they're doing. And he was pretty bad at hiring in his first term. Right? He did not do a good job. I don't think he knew how rotten and corrupt it really was. Even for a New Yorker, I think he was surprised. Yeah. So the quality of most of the people I see around him now is pretty good. And then when you see particularly this peace accord and what he's been doing to basically screw the North Sea Nexus in so many different ways. Now I'm like, holy smokes, this is real. He gets it. And 99% of the world does not even know what's going on.
No, they really don't. So you sold 65 Bitcoin at $900. I was day trading Bitcoins at $2 a piece on Mount Gox.
Woo!
Having sold an old video card for 200 Bitcoin.
Oh, brother.
On the first version of Bitcoin, like eBay or Craigslist. I was there. I wrote an article. I don't know if you know this. I wrote the first publicly available article on Bitcoin for Lou Rockwell back in July of 2010.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Holy,
I actually mined one of the original 50 Bitcoin blocks on an old Intel CPU.
I'm still mining in my garage, brother. I got it whirring away.
And then my wife used my computer once. I hate to throw under the bus, but this is really the story. She used my computer once. Somehow she opened up the wrong email, got a keylogger. The guy was going for my World of Warcraft password, and he
literally took your Bitcoin
and took 225 Bitcoin at $2 a piece.
That is grounds for divorce.
No, it's not. She's the most lovely person in the world, and I probably would have sold them all at $100. So don't feel bad.
Of course, no.
I was flat on my back. I was flat on my back, broke at the time, and it didn't. It's like, trust me, They wouldn't have held him. But I just think about it. I think go back to it, and I'm like, and it wasn't that I lost him to the Mount Gox, getting
Hmm.
shut down. I lost him to a keylogger who drained my account because Mount Gox was holding all the coins on
Yeah.
chain at that point because
Yes.
the
Self
network was so
custody
small
becomes,
that it
yeah.
could, update every 10 minutes. It was no
Yeah.
problem. It was
Yeah.
crazy what happened.
Yeah.
And
Well, my wife definitely reminds me of the 65 Bitcoin I sold to day trade often. And so I take it. I take those licks every single time.
yeah, no, it's fine. It's not a big deal. At this point, I'm okay with it. I have been in so many times. I have been so ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
That's the part of the problem with being ahead of the curve is that timing becomes a real problem because you don't. This is why I had to become a better technical analyst. I don't do this in the podcast, but I do it for my patrons on our market reports where I'm
Hmm.
literally going over, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and everything else, and doing a very rigorous. And I have a very simple trading system. Again, that the fellow that I worked with in Vietnam for 2 years, I actually ghost wrote his book during
And it's
that
all
period.
TA. It's all technical
It's
analysis that
all
you
just
do.
simple. It's all just simple candlestick analysis. I just
Wow.
do very, very simple, stripped down, semi-quantitative analysis. So I have that in my back pocket in order to error check what you're seeing. So when you hear me talk about this stuff on the podcast, what you're hearing is the distillation of me error checking the stuff from 3 or 4 different directions. You get the
Hmm.
technical analysis, you get the cross market analysis that I can sit and chat with people about. I've got the observational analysis of what you're seeing on the day from the headlines, and that's all becoming one big picture on a regular basis, and it just keeps updating. And then as you teach people and you
Yeah.
attract people who are got better skills than you do than in things like prop trading or whatever, this is why
Yeah.
a guy like Vince
Prop
Lanci is
bets.
indispensable as
Yeah.
a human being. Vince is not allowed to die until we beat the city of London.
Yeah.
And I haven't told him that, but there you go, Vince. If you're listening, the gig, man. Um, and it's because he is so good, and so many of these people are good. And I like, my goal is to curate the very best and brightest, so that when we do a podcast like this, you have no agenda, I have no noise.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
we literally go, this is the all signal, no noise podcast.
So,
Period.
so let me ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
On stable coins specifically, understanding this is a great way to export our debt. I guess my main questions are: one, how long will that actually keep us out of financial ruin?
Mm.
And two, how is it going to work if we have all these different stable coins? Will they all be completely interchangeable? Will I be able to buy something with USDC that's priced in USDT?
Mhm.
But I guess most importantly is how long will it keep the boat afloat until that doesn't work either?
Well, that's the bigger question you should ask yourself, isn't that? But first, that can we fix the fiscal position where there's no more net debt being issued per se?
Right,
I
right.
think the government shutdown has given us that that opening because Russ
Hmm.
Vogt has been sitting here, and again, I have some people that I know at OMB, and they've been warning me about this since before the election, what was coming once they got the the means by which to do it, either by getting Congress cowed to the point where they're going to accept whatever Trump tells him to
Hmm.
do, or they give us a gift like this. Shutdown is literally the biggest gift from the universe since
No
Trump.
kidding.
Yeah, since Trump getting missed at Butler, because they can literally now do the reduction in force. And they can start firing everybody, and they can start just gutting everything. Listen to Trump carefully. He's like,
Because
no,
we really only
we're
need
killing it all. It's not all coming back.
it only need 2 trillion, I think, and then we have the books balanced.
It's even less than that now. I mean, remember, you've got 300 to 400 billion in tariffs coming in, and that
Yeah.
should be stable. Um, you've got, we've already done a fair amount of Doge cuts. We've got other things coming in. Yeah, no, I think going back to the 2019 budget is not too hard from here.
So
And
explain.
I've always been told that the number that they're targeting is 1.3 trillion in cuts.
And then we'll grow ourselves out of the rest, right?
We
That's
can.
the
I mean, I
idea.
think we can, especially with a deregulated economy. With that, I mean, they're going to see now that the Supreme Court now that the EPA has said reverse the Obama rule that CO2 is causes
Nonsense.
harm, right,
Yeah.
or whatever the hell the definition is. that literally, I just watched Sean Duffy today. He was just like on Twitter. He's like, you have no idea how many trillions of dollars this is going to open up in capital. You
Oh,
have to
yeah.
realize the big thing here, Adam, is that these fucking people, call them the high table, call them Davos, call them the North Sea. I like TFP. These fucking people is my favorite. Um, these fucking people see you gain 5 minutes of your life back, and they spend all day scheming how to steal four of them.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
It's
And
true.
so if you can get back an hour of your day, imagine how much more productive you'll be in every way. Not typically productive. Oh, I can work harder at work. No, I can be less stressed so that I can actually parent my children, or I can enjoy, an evening with my wife, or I can, oh my God, go out on a date with my wife or something, anything. And then we can start fixing all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's the way we have to start looking at this stuff. And that's the deregulation angle is so big. So then when we move to stable coins, right? Now you're talking about the for you at the end user, this is all middleware. Think of the stable coin architecture that they're talking about. It's this middleware. You don't
Okay.
interact with middleware. You interact with the front end, with
Right.
upperware or whatever the hell it's called. But the middleware stuff is where it matters. They'll all spend like dollars. It'll all be handled by a payment layer behind the scenes. It could be Lightning, it'll probably be Ripple, or it could be a combination of like five or six of them. It don't really matter.
You really
That's
think, just by the way, the psyop of Ripple has been so strong for at least 5 years now.
yeah.
I mean, and it's in churches. In our church, people say, "Hey, man, I bought XRP because this guy says everything's going to be revalued. It's going to go to $3,000." I'm like, bro, I don't think so. I really don't think that's the way
My
you want to go.
my attitude towards Ripple is that it seems to me that the right people are choosing it, and therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I discounted Ripple years ago as central bank coin, right? Like the first
Right. That's
attempt
what it
by
is.
everybody
Yeah.
by the old system to digitize their system,
Hmm.
But the thing is that the bigger question is who's actually in charge of it at this point? I don't know. I don't care. What I note to people is, yeah, I think do I think $35 a token is possible? Yeah. And is that a 10 bagger or 12 bagger from here? Yeah. Should you expect
Yeah.
more than that? No.
No.
And I think just simply anything that removes the City of London Forex um charge system, which is going away. Like Thomas Cook needs to end
Mm.
as a concept, right? Because they
Yeah.
get 8%. The banks get 8% on their forex. That's why they don't give us. That's why they don't give us toasters for opening up a new account anymore, right? Because they're making all their money on the forex and the bank fees and everything else, and the standard kind of net interest margin banking doesn't exist anymore. When we take that away from them, or we figure out a way to minimize it, City of London
They'll have
collapses.
nothing.
Yeah, City of
The
London
business is
literally
gone.
collapses.
Right.
Taking the gold market from them, it's gone.
Yeah.
LBMA, sorry, you're not pulling the London gold pull on us twice. Fuck off. Silver, same thing's happening right now.
Hmm.
The ghost of FOFOA is smiling somewhere. If you know that story.
Of course.
And next is oil, in my mind, as the Brent crude contract. And once the Brent crude contract is revealed as being uninteresting to most traders, which it is,
Which I think President Trump knows. I think he knows
he
this
does.
very well. Yeah. So where does this leave Bitcoin?
It leaves Bitcoin as becoming like gold, a form of pristine collateral. And I do believe that in this
Settlement layer,
generation,
do you think? Settlement layer? A settlement layer?
yeah, I mean, there is going to be there will be a direct Bitcoin settlement layer somewhere, but Bitcoin will ultimately be the capital that only moves when people really have to settle up.
Hmm.
Think about it like gold. We're going to move gold into a position where, on a day-to-day basis, trade flows are going to be denominated ultimately in tokenized gold bank accounts around the world, or same thing with or in Bitcoin accounts around the world, and then it'll be
Hmm.
settled up between central banks on a quarterly basis. It's the way
Mm.
I'm expecting, because you don't really want them to move much. You want to have a nice decentralized network of gold vaults and Bitcoin wallets and that are safe and
Hmm.
yada yada yada. And then it doesn't really necessarily. Then nobody has a geographical control over it. What
Right.
London was trying to do was to move to Dubai
Yeah.
and Doha and Abu Dhabi, and that's why you bringing up earlier. I think the peace deal in Gaza is so incredibly important is because in order to get that done, Trump had to get Netanyahu to sign on the dotted line, but he also
Yep.
needed to get Qatar to realize you
Yep.
don't work for the fucking British anymore. You work for us.
Amen. Amen to that. Oh man, I love that. That's awesome. How about gold? Do you think that, because I'm just asking you questions now as like my guru in this. They keep talking about they're going to revalue it. I mean, at this point, the way it's going, you might not have to do that. I mean, we went from, what is it, $35 an ounce. Now it's 4,000. I
41,
mean,
yeah, 41.75, I think is the last
I
time.
haven't even kept up.
Yeah.
I've been looking at someone gave me 21 silver coins at a meetup the other day. I'm like, wow, this is actually worth something now. Thank you. I put that in this pile over here. That's kind of cool.
Right.
So is that something that you see as viable, like revalue to change? It's basically an accounting trick, I guess, just to change the balance sheet of the country.
Well, it's not just to change the balance sheet of the country, right? It is. It's the question of whether or not they're going to take that money and stuff it into the treasury, right? Because basically, when you revalue, when you take I think the mechanism, and I don't quite understand. I've read the mechanism by which this should occur,
Yeah.
like a half dozen times, and it's still mostly Greek. But the basic idea is that the Fed doesn't actually control the gold on the Treasury's balance sheet. The Fed has a receipt, it has a receipt for the Treasury's gold. The Treasury still owns the gold, but the Fed has
it's like the $1 trillion coin concept.
Right.
Only
Now,
it's real.
what can happen is they can call that receipt, revalue gold to market, and then give it back to the Fed. It would do two things immediately. One, it would add $1 trillion to the Fed's balance sheet because it's currently holding at $11.04 billion on the Fed's balance sheet. Yeah, no, it's hilarious. I read the H.4.1 report of the balance sheet every week, and there it is, $11.04 billion. That's what we sold it to at 42.22 an ounce back in 71, and then that would go back on the balance sheet a little over trillion, now maybe $1.1 trillion, which would expand the Fed's balance sheet by $1 trillion, taking it to 7.2 trillion, but it would only be 7-to-1 leverage to gold at that point, because now you've got gold on the balance sheet at 1.1 trillion, a total balance sheet of 7.2, a 7-to-1 ratio for the Fed doesn't look too bad. I think we're going to at least $5,000 in this move to take gold, to take the Fed's leverage down to around 5. And then we'll see where we are.
But isn't the whole point to really get rid of the Fed altogether or neuter it?
Neuter it.
Yeah.
I think what the goal is in the short term or in the medium term is to leave the Fed in place as an army, a standing army in a financial war that is not settled yet. And be, as I've described in other podcasts, in very broad terms to people, the enforcer of the international par value of the dollar overseas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and the guarantor of the domestic credit markets internally. So internally, it's there to provide liquidity and backstop, be the lender of last resort, either in the commercial paper market, but it's going to have to be divorced from the treasury market. It will have to give up that role of being the lender of last resort in the treasury market. It can still, make a market and repos and all the other stuff, but at a certain point, it's going to have to go back to its original conception, which is to only backstop the commercial paper market. And that, again, and the treasury is going to take over issuing a lot of money through stablecoins and through local banks issuing stablecoins backed by U.S. treasuries. And that then gives us a banking model that's very similar to where we were in the free banking system post-Reconstruction, or leading up to and through, post-Reconstruction.
Where literally everyone made their own dollar, right? You had your own coin.
Yeah. And now, and it was fine when it was a gold and silver standard, because you just minted it and you can melt it down and restamp it. Today, what you have to do is you have to back it with a common denominator,
which is
that common denominator should be the U.S. Treasury, should be U.S. Treasuries. And if we fix the fiscal position, U.S. Treasury, T-bills or whatever are going to be just fine.
So how does that work with interest rates then? Do interest rates go down with this?
They could. It all depends on what the market you're going to watch the price of dollars go up and down like they should based on the demand for capital. And we should also see a real re-regionalization of the cost of capital within the United States, so that, this is one of the things that I've talked about in other venues, and because I've discussed it in depth in my newsletter, which is the durable political advantage that was created by the singular Fed funds rate created the modern California.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that when you have a singular Fed funds rate, similar to how you have a singular um, exchange rate for the euro,
Yeah.
and everybody understands it in terms of currency. It's easy over in Europe. Like the Deutschmark would be far stronger than the euro is, and the Italian
As it
lira,
always was.
right?
Yeah.
And the Italian lira would, for example, would be lower. And so,
Yeah.
therefore, what that really does is it sets up. And since everybody else in the UK and in the EU can borrow at Germany's credit rating,
Ah, yeah.
then
Mm-hmm.
Italy runs a durable trade disadvantage through currency arbitrage between the Germans and themselves. And that's why the pigs are the pigs. And that's why all the political power rolled up to Germany and to a lesser extent, France.
Right.
Now, because it's literally currency arbitrage, and then obviously bond arbitrage and everything else is the mechanism by which currencies are supposed to be reflective of the efficiency of capital usage within the economy. Germany is getting a cheap freaking euro. Italy's getting an expensive friggin' euro, right?
Yeah.
So in the United States, you do the same thing. You can do the same analysis if everybody's borrowing at the same rate. In Europe, they borrow at different rates with a singular currency. In the United States, we all quote unquote borrow at the same rate using when we all have different demands for capital and all have different capital efficiency.
Right.
I did an analysis when I started going down this rabbit hole for the newsletter. I did an analysis of, and I set the hypothesis like the good scientist that I am. I said I think this is true, and then I went ahead and I looked at the share of the electoral votes of two states in the United States that were both in the Union in 1900. One was California and the other was Mississippi, and they both had 9.
Hmm.
And they're both at 9 all the way up until the Banking Act of 1935, which created the monolithic Fed funds rate, the singular New York Fed funds rate. And then all of a sudden, California started to take off. And Mississippi today, California is 54, Mississippi is 6.
Yeah.
Now, and even New York at its height was never more than 9% of the electoral vote. And to California today is over 10, it's still 10%, and it should be 51 because the census was wrong. But the point being is that what happened was the government started funneling money into California through the defense and Silicon Valley and all of this stuff.
Sure.
They built out modern California. And then California, because of that rise in the cost of capital, because of the rise in demand for dollars, interest rates should have gone to 6% in California, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And capital in Mississippi should have been 2% if it was, the Fed funds rate's 4%.
Right.
Didn't happen. So that
Right.
some of those contracts should have gone to Mississippi, and therefore those two things would have balanced themselves out over time.
Wasn't that exactly what President Trump is doing now with production? He's trying to bring that back, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's trying to level that playing field, and also his salt tax deduction, or the salt deduction cap from the first set of Trump tax cuts back in 2017. I dubbed then the greatest piece of political durable advantage, like it's since FDR. Somewhere the corpse of FDR is smiling from on high, because FDR wishes he had that kind of thing, because it set in motion the draining of the high tax income tax states to the low tax states. I watched money drain in from Florida, New York, from California, New York, and New Jersey, and everywhere else into Florida.
Right.
And the price of my house.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. Wow. That's amazing. I love listening to your analysis of this stuff. We're in, I hope someone is documenting this properly, because it feels like no one is. Everything's so ephemeral, it's here today, tomorrow. You were talking earlier, I was just thinking about this. When we get some of our time back and we can, play with our kids or go take our wife on a date, the problem is and I'm not sure who really is behind the new opium, but I mean, the doom scrolling is a national health emergency. It is. So I was reading Facebook, or Meta filed with the FTC. I was reading this article today,
Hmm.
And it's about them having to, there'll be certain restrictions on being a social media network, age restrictions. It's coming for everything, by the way, every app. And sadly, I think the digital ID is really in our future for this very reason. That's how they are going to usher it in, probably similar to the Brit card. We'll see. And they filed a brief with the FTC and said, you can't call us a social media network because only 7% on Instagram and 17% on Facebook use any of our social tools with friends they follow. All the rest is spent scrolling video from people they do not follow and are not connected to in any manner whatsoever.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I'm like, we are sick. We are really, really sick. We've got to stop this insanity.
Well, it's really funny. You'll be enheartened to hear, and I like to bring her up all the time because because she's awesome, and two, because she's my daughter, which is that my daughter considers Twitter an absolute hellscape for exactly what you just described. That it's actually driving all of us irretrievably insane. It's bad for us in every way. So I caught her the other day, and she's an online chick. I mean, she's not.
Is she
like
Gen Z or is she millennial?
She's 19. So
so she's been saved. There's a whole part of the Gen Z population, and they're listening to us, Tom. They're listening to us. They are searching. They're searching for real information. They're searching for authenticity. They are not. And you know what? This is what scared me. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you go.
We had a meetup in Fredericksburg, and there was a lot of people there. This is where I live, in Fredericksburg, Texas. And there were a lot of Gen Zers, and they're early to mid 20s. They're married. They're expecting kids. And they say, Adam, you have to understand, when COVID hit, I was in high school. So that was, where, soft times make weak men make hard times make hard men. I think that we are now in that position where a whole bunch of Gen Z became trans, and this was a direct attack. It only really happened during COVID when everybody was online.
Yep.
And so we've lost some, and I'm not calling out trans specifically, but as a very obvious thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole group that went, oh no, I'm not having this. And that's your daughter. That's my daughter's a millennial, but she already figured this out a long time ago. She also didn't go to college, which I think is why she didn't get indoctrinated.
What I'll say about my daughter, and I'll say she's actually in both camps because she has direct experience with that and with the transgenderism in her high school and amongst her friend group, and she also has a different perspective on it in other ways. So what's interesting with her is she recognizes all of these things that are happening, and while she doesn't necessarily agree with me, that I look at so much of this and I just say, look, and I talked to her about this the other night. To me, this just looks like and I mean this with all degree of empathy, that this is a coping mechanism for all of the anxiety. This is for all. I mean, when you realize that half of these kids, and you look at their parents and you go, oh, I know, I get it. Like I get like why you are where you are. Look at the parents, look at the way the other kids are, look at the anxiety that we're all under, and the fact that anxiety. The fact that like the parents can't make ends meet. They're almost deracinated in their own homes, right? So when you realize that, and then I have millennial friends, and I remember sitting down chatting with them, and I'm like, oh, I know why you guys are the way you are. Oh, that's easy because you watched your parents go broke 3 times.
Exactly.
That ain't tough. That ain't tough. And you and your parents don't speak, do you? Yeah, not really. I know why. Because like your parents went broke 3 times, and and so, and then I have the odd, and by the way, so does Dexter White. We have the weird thing of having been the late kids from silent generation. My dad was born in 28. My mom was born in 33. Wow. They were Depression era kids. My dad was 40 when I was born. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he's the youngest of 11 of the young. I'm the youngest of 4 of the youngest of 11. My grandparents all came over on the boat 120 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So in many ways, so Dexter White's the same thing. They didn't have their kid, they didn't have their kids until they were late too. Right. So we are these like kind of high Gen X kids. I'm born in '68. He's born around the same time. Like we're born in that era of like the peak of what is Gen X in terms of the ethos. We don't have boomer parents, not even early boomer parents. We have World War II generation parents,
Yeah.
right? My dad just missed going to World War II. He wound up in Korea. So we have a different perspective. And we grew up during the Depression of the 1970s. So we had
Yes.
Depression era parents with a Depression era
Yeah.
childhood. And so we have just a different mentality. And I think that so we get why these kids are this way and why they're, we have empathy for them, but we also don't have patience
Nope.
for because you
Not
can't have
much.
patience for it. You have empathy, but you've got to go, this is time. It's big boy pants time. Sorry, it sucks. I apologize to my daughter all the time. I know, leaving your world of shit, doing my best to not leave your world of shit, but we'll get through it together for as long as I'm still here.
As I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting back on my own childhood. My parents were both born just before the Second World War. So not really Bobby Soxers, but not
Mhm.
really hippies. Actually, my dad was more a wannabe hippie, if anything.
Mhm.
My whole family is government, all kinds of, from military to intelligence. My uncle is Donald Gregg. He was national security advisor to Bush Sr. He held that role until Iran-Contra. Then after he had to go to become ambassador to Korea. Uncle Don is still with us, and he's let me ask him a lot of things. So I've learned a lot about the pickle factory and how that works. But my parents, so we moved to the Netherlands in '72, and that was right when the oil crisis hit. And so first I remember that the dollar was 5 guilders at the time, which is unthinkable now. Right. And we had carless Sundays. So there was literally, you could not, talk about rationing. You could not drive on Sunday. We'd be riding our bikes on the highway on Sundays. It was the most bizarre thing.
Wow.
And then living there and then going through the Euro, which literally, this is when we really started the podcast once the Lisbon Treaty got signed. Because if you recall, the Lisbon Treaty, Ireland didn't sign it.
Right.
They said no, they voted no. And then the jackals came out and went, you voted wrong. We think you need to do that again. Oh, yeah. We need to vote again. You're right. And so I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. And then I looked at the Lisbon Treaty because the way it was being sold was you'll all have the same money. It's great. No more changing at the border. And by the way, no more border. This is going to be great. No more passports. It's going to be awesome, except for that Schengen thing over there. Don't worry about those guys.
Right.
And it was anything but awesome. You literally went from a cup of coffee for 2.5 guilders, 6 months later, 2.5 euros. And the exchange for the euro to the guilder was 2.10. So, the prices doubled, but wages didn't, of course. And everybody was like, oh, it's for Europe. It's good for Europe. I was just like, what is going on? I saw everything happen. I saw the, because I came back to the States at the end of '99 to go back and lived in Holland for a while, then Belgium, then England, and I remember coming back in '99, end of '99, and there was what has happened to the country, and there was this famous politician Pim Fortuyn, and he was this very educated. I mean, to the elitist level, 6'5", my height, bald, gay, but dressed in these beautiful suits. And he was saying, we have to stop the Islamification of our country. And I had missed all this in the years that I've been gone. Right. And I look around, I'm like, wow, something is going on here. His party won by a landslide posthumously because he got assassinated 2 weeks before the election. In Holland, he got assassinated outside a radio studio, by, of course, some crazy guy who was an animal lover, bullcrap, who is now out. He served his 20 years and he's out and he's free again.
And now he's free to get the gold watch.
Well, whatever.
And the book deal.
And then there was Theo van Gogh, direct descendant of Van Gogh, and he was quite famous as a journalist, as a writer, very like kind of more like a real leftist type of guy. And he invited me on his TV show once. And then he said, Adam, I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. So yeah, come by the house. And he came out and says, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're an American. Leave while you can. Leave while you can. And I was like, wow, T.O., like, you're kind of crazy. He was murdered, shot down by some Islamic jihadist nut job, and stuck a knife in his chest with a note of the other people, which was Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who they were going to go and kill. I mean, the stuff that happened in the past 20, 25 years in Europe in particular, like my daughter's still there. She's 35 now. And, you know, she has a dual nationality. I'm like, baby, really consider coming over here at some point, because this is not going to end well. I mean, they don't care about their own people. You look at the UK, just bring it back to the North Sea Nexus. Sure. They do not care about their citizens at all, at all, at all. This goes back to the population bomb people, the, you know, climate change, which has been, you know, part of their mission forever. They just want less people. They just want to kill people. And it's insane. I mean, I don't know if they're reptiles or what they are, but it's an insane mentality they have towards the world. It's just nuts.
You're correct. They are insane. You're right.
Inbreeding, man. It's got to be inbreeding of the royal bloodlines. I can't see any other reason.
The thing is that even that leadership, I don't even know that they're, like, as you pointed out earlier, they're not deeply impressive people. So who's actually running things. And of course the answer to the question, of course, is that nobody's running things. I always like to use the phrase, those people who think they run the world. Yeah. Not the people who run the world, because there is nobody that runs the world. But there are people who are close enough to the top of the power structure who have the ability to give orders. So, like, I like to call it now, you have the high table, and you have upper management, and then you have middle management. That's the way I like to look at it now.
I think it was you who said Hillary Clinton, middle management.
Middle management.
Yeah, so many times. People
Nancy
crack
Pelosi,
up.
Middle management.
Middle management.
Order taker or order maker. You decide, right?
Yeah.
George Soros is upper management. He's the implementer of the high tables strategy.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about where we are in this moment in time, and this is one of the things I started thinking about, literally, I think it was on Sunday, I was doing the market report for the patrons, and I was doing the kind of free association ranting thing that I always do. And in there, I do like an off the cuff, anywhere from 25 to 35 or 40-minute private podcast where I just literally riff, right? I do this 3 times a week, twice for my patrons and once for Newsmax. Newsmax, I can only do 15 minutes. They have me like bound down to 30 minutes and get out, which is fine.
It's fine. But you get more people listening on the podcast, I'm sure.
But yeah, it is what it is. It's just meant to be a short update for the people. It's actually just hard for it's neither here nor there. I understand why they want it that way, and it's fine. So it's actually good discipline for me. But what I was thinking about the other day was that, and again, this goes back to conversations I've had with the Ian Burlingame, I've had with even my friend Alex Craner and others. We've all talked about, like, what's the process? What's Trump doing? Like, what we can see he's winning. We can see he has a strategy. And then you think about it, and it starts with public money first. So you cut off all the public money, all of our tax money going to turn us into perpetual tax cattle, right? And that's the USAID, that's National Endowment for Democracy, that's the Ford Foundation cut off, that's Harvard, that's all that. That's all public money. Right. Cut all that money out. That's easy. You have it under control. And Russ Vought is going to cut off even more of that money, every day now until Chuck Schumer finally like knuckles under. Upper management's money is the organized crime. That's the North Sea Nexus.
Drugs,
right? Drugs, kids, organs.
Yep.
All of it. The kids,
I'm right
the
there
girls,
with you, brother.
All of it, right? And Ukraine is, of course, a nexus for all of this crap.
When I was growing up, Ukraine, that was drugs. You wouldn't even go there to get hookers. I mean, I grew up in Amsterdam, so, you could go around the corner. But that's where, the Beatles sang about it. The Ukraine girls really knocked me out back in the USSR. Right. I mean, it was like everything bad was in Ukraine, and we all knew it. Like, Ukraine, I'm not going there. No way. You get killed in Ukraine. It's horrible. We all knew that. That's how we grew up.
Right. So what's funny is that's why he's going after the upper management money now. He's going after the cartels. He's going after the fentanyl trade. He's going after Maduro in Venezuela in order to shore up the Gulf of America, right? Because
Yeah.
right, and the Panama Canal, right? And you just like start thinking about things geographically, and all of a sudden, like if the Brits do nothing but geographic analysis of how the world's supposed to operate, then maybe we should do the same thing. That's why he wants the polar sea routes, and why he wants Canada, and why he wants Greenland.
Yeah.
Right? It all makes sense when you start thinking about it that way. And we create fortress North and South America is really what he's doing, right?
Yes. Oh, it's totally shifted to North and South. Totally.
And kick the Brits out of Argentina.
And Rubio is doing a good job. Rubio knows exactly, and he speaks Spanish. He's the perfect guy for the job.
And he's a badass when it comes to, and he's well respected within all of those communities.
Yes.
Marco, we call him Foam Party Marco because, well, everybody
we know what he used to do. We all know.
Hey, we know that, but and when
fine.
when the globalists were in power, he was a neocon, and now that he's been unleashed and been given a very specific role, now he's the hardest work. Now he's the honorary Haitian in the cabinet. He's got every job there is, right? So, did I say that out loud?
I heard it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So, no. So, but go back to the public money, private money, upper management's money. How do you, once you start taking out upper management, now the high table doesn't have anybody to issue orders to. But the interesting part about this is I started thinking about how can you get the high table to put their money on the table into the system that they've been using the system to extract all the wealth, all the Van Goghs and the Rembrandts you talked about earlier, the thousands of tons of gold they have in vaults in banks that no one's ever heard of, right? All the James Bond stuff, that's true, right? Like just real bankers don't have Wikipedia pages, the whole 9 yards, right? So when you think of it that way, right, what would it take to get them to put their money on the table? Maybe you take away you start going after the gold bullion trade. Oh, that didn't get your attention. You weren't going to cough up your gold. Well, how about all your goddamn silver?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, what happens when we fire all of these government employees that are all sitting on these mortgages, on these houses that BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard have been buying up and then doubling and then selling to each other? Like BlackRock buys a house for $400,000, sells it to Blackstone for $700,000, sets the market in the area, and then prices everybody out of their own neighborhood, and then rents their own house back to them.
Well, you had such a good rundown. I actually played it on the show about le petit bourgeoisie. The middle class. How do you screw the middle class? And you do this by zero interest rates, get everyone to buy. You get the financial crisis, then pop them with inflation. I mean, wow, that is like classic. For centuries, this tactic has been applied.
So what we're doing now is we're trying to get, as opposed to the money rolling up from us to middle management to upper management to them, we're trying to get them to put their money back on the table to keep the system they have from deflating. Because if their system deflates before they can try it, the thing I've been thinking about, Adam, and I've been like applying this model everywhere, is they have to still think they can win.
Oh, sure.
Because if they still think they can win, then they're going to put their money on the table. It's like the sucker at the poker table. If you don't know that who the fish is at the poker table, it's you.
Yeah,
right?
It's you.
So
you're the sucker.
What you got to do is keep letting them think that they're not the fish.
Right.
And they'll keep putting their money on the table. In the same way that I think this is how Putin's been running the operation in Ukraine. Keep giving NATO this, or the European arm of NATO, this illusion that they can win. They'll keep dumping men and material in. Putin can blow it up with 155 millimeter shells and drones. It's cheap. It's effective asymmetric warfare.
And Trump is playing along with it. Hey, buy our stuff. Buy our stuff. Buy more of our stuff. Go ahead, buy our stuff.
And and I'll be honest with you. What's funny is I was talking to Vince Lanci. It didn't make it into the podcast. Vince only reminded me of it about this after we stopped recording, but then he posted the chart up on his Twitter feed a couple of times. He said, you have to realize, Tom, I can see it in real time. The Chinese and the United States are going back and forth. It's your turn to buy gold. No, it's your turn to buy gold. Now you should buy some gold now. I'll back off and you can buy some gold. And they're just playing, and they're doing the same thing in the silver market now.
And so that's tapping the price up?
And that's what's tapping the price up. Wow. And every time, then the United States backs off, then London comes in and tries to set the price, and the Chinese come in and whack them in the head, and they take physical delivery of everything, and the next month the United States does it, and they think they're oh yeah, no, this is like a rag doll. And you got the
Wow.
Chinese on one side, you get the United States on the other, and London's in the middle, and they're going, yeah, pull.
Wow.
It's beautiful, dude.
That's mind blowing.
It,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
beautiful. Like, and
Uh,
you know, like it's funny. You only get perspective like this when you've actually been at a table, right? When you've actually physically been at a table and you've done this to other people in a board game setting or in a live action role playing setting, which I've done. And so
mhm.
I'm like, I've done this 1,000 times. I'm going to play that guy off of that guy, and this and that, and then I'm going to take them apart, and then I'm going to win. And so to me, this just comes naturally because I've done it 1,000 times. It's just like,
Wow.
it's just one of those things. But and then there's the whole. Well, let's think. What would Emperor Palpatine do, right?
Mm.
And then you ask yourself that question: can you get yourself in that headspace? I can every once in a while, and then I have to go take a shower. But it's also the way I get my job done, and
I'll
that's
just add one thing just because I feel obliged to. I got
sure.
saved 3 years ago here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at throughout history what God has done and what our country was really founded on. I mean, if you really look at the documents, if you really look at the Mayflower Compact, if you really look at why people came here, by the way, to get away from the Church of England,
Right.
run by the king, for a whole bunch of reasons. God loves bad boys, man. He loves making the broken, the flawed, the nut jobs, the liars, the philanderers, the thieves. He loves using them. And my prayer is, thank you, God. Thank you. I think you've done it. And you're using President Trump, and he might even know it at this point, kind of a little bit,
Right.
but it doesn't matter. I get a lot of Christians saying, he doesn't know Jesus. Like, he's my president. I didn't vote for my pastor. This guy's being used. He's being used for something. And we've got a couple of years, and enjoy the show, because this is a hand that's coming from above. There's really something beautiful going on here.
I'm not particularly, I like to still consider myself ecclesiastically confused. Yeah.
That's way okay, brother.
Okay.
That's good.
But at the same time, when I went to Cornerstone up in Calgary this year for my friend Sean Newman, I did a 15-minute speech about quantum mechanics and eigenstates of being and Philip K. Dick, and said, look, we chose a different timeline. When we looked at Butler, Pennsylvania, said, no, he misses. I don't want to live in that timeline. And we just decided to live there.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
And then I brought it into the Lady and the Tiger and some other stuff. And I said, in my version of Lady and the Tiger, who says the tiger's bad? Because it could be a sleeping tiger, and the lady could be fucking Hillary Clinton.
That's right. That's right.
So it all depends on your frame of reference, and it all depends on whether you want to cast somebody as the hero, the victim, or the villain. And in you saying that, one of my favorite pieces of fiction that wasn't written by Philip K. Dick is Stephen Donaldson's Thomas Covenant series, which is a classic story of how God uses the worst man imaginable, a leper rapist, to save the world.
Yeah.
And save himself in the process.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
These stories exist for a reason, man. They exist for a reason.
And there's a reason why that book was it's the reason why that book in the 1977 gave us Stephen Donaldson and Star Wars, two unbelievable pieces of redemptive fiction for a generation. And it was, people don't realize this now because they haven't lived long enough, because we've all outlived all this. But that was the series that brought fantasy literature back from the wasteland, after Tolkien hit his peak for 20 years. It was in the wasteland. And then Donaldson
and Tolkien, man, his stuff is biblical. Stories. His stuff is biblical. It really is. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It is. He explicitly meant it as a Catholic allegory. And he hates the word allegory, but you know what I mean. And I love the fact that when I realize, things I know about what Tolkien did and reading and writing that novel, an immense piece of work, which was, he didn't know how to end it. It took him 10 years to figure out the ending. He had it all written, and he couldn't figure out how to end it.
Yeah, it's so true. Couldn't figure that one out. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then he finally came up, of course, with the perfect ending, which is that Frodo fails, and then he's saved by the wreck.
Right. Dude, you give me
unbelievable.
homework now. There's things I got to read now that I haven't read. So there's stuff I got to bone up on. It's
Yeah, no,
amazing.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a very well read man, Adam. I LARP as one,
Could have
certainly.
fooled me, brother.
No, man, I really am not. I just really know the shit that I know really well, and I just use it over and over and over again. And I care deeply about, and I'm again all signal, no noise. So I don't read a bunch of crap, but I curate my music very carefully, and I curate my literature very carefully, and I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit freer with films.
What are you listening to? What kind of music are you listening to?
I just got scored Rush tickets for the 15th time. Are you kidding? I saw them on every tour from Grace Under Pressure.
It's not the same without Geddy, man. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. It's not the same without Geddy Lee. It's not the same.
Neil.
Neil, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It won't be, but doesn't have to be. It could be something different, and it'll be fun for it to be something different. I'm looking forward to watching them exercise some ghosts.
It's the new version of Deadhead, man. It's like that, Fish. So many friends of mine just love Rush, just love it. All their passwords are 2112. It's like, dude, you really got to do something about that.
Yeah, no, that I agree with. We'll agree with that as well. And that brings me back to, when I was a teenager, and I was a huge Rush fan back when I was a teenager. When you were on MTV, I used to I used to watch MTV for hours. So we
didn't play enough. I think we
didn't, but I watched what I could watch, and I would sit there with the VCR and I would tape it. And I remember getting a great intro. I got 2 minutes of the absolutely gorgeous Martha Quinn, and then the Big Money video. And I'm like, I lived with that throughout all of my high school. It was brilliant. So,
oh man, the fact that VHS comes up in the conversation is crazy by itself.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I had a Betamax. I was that much of a geek.
I had the V2000 system from Philips, which was far superior to everything, and literally went nowhere. It just went nowhere at all.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's really funny. This has been the kind of conversation which is just, it, of course, sparks all sorts of memories and everything else, like my entire life. But I get called on my inveterate use of pop culture references all the time. But what's funny is you bring up you're having been saved, which is phenomenal for you. I'm very happy to hear that if that's what works for you, truly. For me, like the temple for me in growing up was the movie theater during the mid 80s. And I really did spend that's where, I was a very, very disillusioned, disaffected kid. So when I say these post-COVID kids, I have empathy for them. I'm like, dude, I barely left my fucking house and as a kid. And, that was the refuge, and the things that I cared about were the things I cared about. And it was the way I could function. So, we
didn't really have that. The Netherlands, going to the theater. I mean, first of all, the media landscape was 2 television stations.
Right.
And they'd come on at 7 p.m., the same bong, news, 5 minutes, and then they would go off air at 11:30. I mean, radio was even worse. You had 4 radio stations, all government controlled, which is why I very early on I became a pirate radio broadcaster. That's how I started. I was doing pirate radio in Amsterdam.
I had
Radio
no idea.
Decibel. Oh yeah, I was 17. And we had a big pylon mast on the roof, and the FCC, they were listening. So they'd come by every 6 weeks. Okay, we got to bus you guys. Come downtown. We'll take your stuff. We were on the air within 8 hours. We're back on the air, and we were playing. So mind you, the top 40, the popular music station in Holland at the time was playing polka music, Lawrence Welk. We could hear Wolfman Jack on long wave.
Right.
There were some of the older pirate stations on the North Sea, but we were FM guys. And so we were playing Chicago Warehouse, Import Records. Madonna came by before she was Madonna, did Hash Under a Glass right there in the studio. I mean, we were, and that's what I really learned about community, which, you and I have both, we talked about that in the beginning, community, how community is so important to the product that you make, and they were really a big part of it. Not just because they were bringing me weed, but they were bringing records they had got in from somewhere. It was all import stuff, and someone had been to America, came over, brought some. It was all vinyl, of course, and just stories and experiences, and it was so completely different from from the socialist, very socialist country that it was and still is, honestly. It's just kind of covered up a little bit with commercialism, but it's still completely socialist. And you can see all the problem. I mean, I've lived in socialist countries, brother. It does not work. It's no good. And it ultimately pits people against each other. It doesn't work well.
No, it's the like I said, like I like to call it the unquenchable envy of Marxism.
Yes. It's so true. It's so true.
So,
yeah.
Man, I don't know. Like, do we have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we quit while we're ahead. I would love to do this again in the future. Whenever it works out for you and you feel it's appropriate, or I have something to say. Yeah. We don't have an interview show. It's just right. John and Adam, your two uncles. We're almost car talk. But
which I remember with great fondness.
Oh yeah. You come for the media deconstruction, you stay for the stories, because we got stories, of course.
Right.
But I love what you're doing. I love your guests. I love your show. I love you. I love the ladies from Promethean Action. They are like, their updates like, oh yeah, like I'm ready. I'm good to go. I thank you really for the work that you're doing. It's been very impactful for me and for the No Agenda family as well, because, you were talking about the pipelines. That was episode 121. We're now at 1807. And I remember, the pipelines, we talked about that for years and years and years. And we'd be tracking the pipelines and like, look, all conflicts are about turf, three things: turf, resources, and there's always a hooker involved somewhere. It's always the same thing. Yeah. And so the pipelines thing, we really, we had that. And then, COVID, which, I'm sure you had the same, like, that was a whole different deal. And we really helped people without even knowing it, I think, through that period. They just needed community, community that wasn't insane. Yeah. And so that helped. And now, with everything going on with Trump too, it was the wake up call that I needed to rekindle all these memories, all these things that I inherently knew, all the history. I mean, I went to Dutch school since 5th grade, so I understand what the Dutch did, and I have more insight than most people get going through the American education system. So it just all clicked, and I really thank you for that, brother. It's been really helpful.
But you're welcome. Is I guess the only thing I can really say, and
that's all you have to say. It's an honor
to hear that, and I appreciate it. And we'll just leave it there then. Adam Curry, this has been a blast. You of course are welcome back on the show whenever you want. And if you want to bring John along for the ride one of these days, he's more than welcome too. That'd be fun.
You should have him on by yourself. You should have John on. So he would love that.
If you want to set up the invitation, because that I'm socially awkward, I would really appreciate it.
I will make the connection. He will love. He doesn't get asked enough, and quite honestly, he doesn't leave the house much. So to be able to do this on Zoom would be great. He would have a ball, because that is a smart guy with more historical knowledge than you and I have put together. He really
that would be fun, and I would love to do it. And
I'll make that happen.
Like to say, I understand the whole idea about not getting out of the house, because on the best days I'm barely fit for human consumption. So with that said, Adam Curry, he's the No Agenda podcast, one half of the. How about this? The better half of the No Agenda podcast.
No. It's equal.
I'm Tom Luongo. You can find him where are you on Twitter? My friend.
I'm at Adam Curry on Twitter.
Adam Curry on Twitter. I'm TFL1728. Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns. You guys know the drill. Be well, take care, and keep your stick on the ice.